been three recent shooting incidents, and there's kind of a pattern between them, but the pattern is more in terms of the shooting, the speed with which the shooting took place, the number of rounds fired, and at the same time, there's been a big difference in terms of how prosecutors have responded to each incident. Now, the first is quite recent. It involves a young man named Kevin Salas Madrid, who was working in a sort of discount, a dollar type store, and he encountered another individual who was known as a serial shoplifter. He confronted the shoplifter and basically asked him to stop. The shoplifter in turn punched Madrid in the face, and Madrid pulled out a gun that he was carrying and shot the shoplifter 14 or 15 times. Police arrived on the scene, and Madrid confessed that he thought that the shooting, 14 or 15 rounds, was egregious. He is now facing second-degree murder charges. In the second case, a young man named Ali Naji walked into a police station in Dearborn, Michigan. He was carrying a handgun, and according to the police version of events, he held up the handgun and attempted to fire it at an officer who was at the reception lobby of the police station. Now, the reception lobby is constructed so that there is bulletproof plexiglass between the entrance of the police station and where the police officer actually was. Najee's gun jammed, and at that point, the police officer, who had sort of pulled back a few meters, rushed forward, opened one of the windows of the bulletproof glass, and fired 14 rounds in very quick succession at Najee, killing him. The police officer is not facing murder charges. Any prosecution has been dropped. And the third of these cases is perhaps the most infamous. It got the most coverage. It involves a young man named Kyle Rittenhouse, who went to a demonstration in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Now, the reason for that demonstration was that a black man, Jacob Blake, had been shot around 3 days earlier by a police officer. The police version of events is that Blake was carrying a knife. The officer felt threatened. Blake was shot in the back, and it was the fact that he was shot in the back instigated a series of demonstrations that were quite violent, including burning down stores and so forth. Those demonstrations really sort of polarized Kenosha, and what happened was that the demonstrators who were who did not trust the police's version of events, and there were demonstrators who were out there in order to show their support for the police, and Rittenhouse was part of the latter group. During these demonstrations, a man named Rosenbaum approached Rittenhouse, who was carrying an AR-15, and tried to apparently grab the gun, the AR-15 from Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse shot him 4 times. Then a second individual who was carrying a skateboard swung the skateboard at Rittenhouse. He was again shot dead. A third individual approached Rittenhouse. The third individual was carrying a handgun. Rittenhouse pointed his gun at the other individual, raised his hand, still holding his weapon. And Rittenhouse's version of events is that when the individual put his hand down, Rittenhouse felt that he was being threatened, and he shot the individual in the bicep, seriously wounding but not killing him. Rittenhouse was tried and was let off on all charges. Now, what seems to be happening is you have a case where people are making snap decisions. In the first case, the Madrid case, part of the prosecution's argument seems to be that Madrid used excessive force. He shot 14 or 15 rounds. He was assaulted, he was physically assaulted, but he shot very quickly, and he admitted later in the police car that he was quite angry, and he himself apparently used the word egregious to describe his own actions. In the case of the police officer, whose name I do not know, the one in Dearborn, Michigan, the one who shot Ali Najee, Najee approached the reception desk with a gun. The police version is that Najee wanted to fire his gun, at the police officer what Najee was intending to do, whether he was actually wanting to fire the gun or was simply pointing the gun in a threatening fashion. Furthermore, because the police officer was behind bulletproof glass, one would think that logically the officer could have demanded that Najee drop his weapon and made the demand to see what Najee did before opening fire. The officer clearly comes to the plexiglass just as Najee is fumbling with his handgun, trying to unjam it, and fires very quickly, 14 rounds, and Najee is killed. In the third case with Rittenhouse's whole defense rests on the fact that he felt that he was being attacked. None of the cases of Rittenhouse shooting individuals was Rittenhouse, as far as I know, actually physically assaulted. In other words, there was no contact. Either his gun was grabbed, or somebody took a swing at him, or somebody approached him in a way that Rittenhouse claimed was threatening. What are the differences here? In what case does lethal force become justifiable? And is the problem for somebody like Madrid the fact that he simply talked too much? I mean, is this part of the heart of the matter? Did Madrid simply confess too much when he was picked up by the police? Was he upset? Did he basically incriminate himself? Your own thoughts on all of this are welcome.